If you have something good to say, more people need to hear it and more people need to watch it. When you want to give value, give value. When you want to sell, sell like hell. And then they catapult into the multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar status.
I'm wondering if you could speak to that broader lens of what a personal brand is far beyond what I just post on the internet.
The word brand has become much more important and much more prevalent in pop culture.
How does the advent of AI change personal branding?
I think AI is...
Today we're here with world-class branding expert Chris Do. He hails from Los Angeles, and he really made his mark as a designer. His company, Blind, sold over $80 million in projects, and Chris even picked up a daytime Emmy along the way. He's done incredible work with brands like Justin Timberlake and Sony. His personal brand got so good in the design world that folks started asking him for advice on how to build a personal brand. Now, Chris speaks on stages as big as Adobe and is sought after around the world on the topic of personal branding. And today he's here with me in Austin, Texas, and we're here to talk about how AI is going to change personal branding forever. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I'm curious, in your view, how does the advent of AI change personal branding?
I think AI is a very intelligent tool, but I think it's limited by the quality of the input and what it outputs. And so I think it's really kind of worthwhile to note that it's not a magic bullet to solve all problems. It's not going to fix everything that you do poorly. It is a very, very powerful and intelligent tool, and it's getting better every single day. But I'm not so certain that if you don't have strong values, a compelling backstory, that you know how to build community, that having an AI thing is going to make that any better.
One thing I really took from studying with you that really kind of changed how I thought about personal branding and even branding in general is you pointed out that so often online personal branding is like, oh, here's a story about myself or my company, P.S. buy my stuff. Right?
Right.
And so there's perpetually this commercial intent stench in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really took away from being in your program was taking a look at like, how can I actually just be me? And I always remember the one class when you talked about how all the big brands you've worked with, they're constantly trying to seem more personal, like a one-to-one conversation. But here, entrepreneurs and people with personal brands, including yourself, it's like, oftentimes we're trying to sound bigger and tougher, when in fact, we need to just go back to being ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's really how you crack the code. How do you see that continuing to be an edge or advantage in the world of like ChatGPT just pumping out content nonstop?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to just start off by quoting a friend of mine. Her name's Yo Santosa, and she said that people don't fall in love with corporations. They fall in love with personalities. So what's happened is it's a legal entity, right? A corporation is a legal entity. It behaves like a person, but we know it's not a person. Mitt Romney famously said, oh, corporations are people too. And I think we knew what he meant, but the way it came out was terrible. It felt like he was tone deaf to the needs of everyday people. So when you're at the Fortune 500, Fortune 100 level, you're working with the world's best creative thinkers, marketers, strategists, writers, designers to help tell the story of the founder. It's usually almost always the founder story that becomes part of the lore of the brand. Like Hewlett-Packard in the garage, Steve Jobs, the two Steves starting Apple, Wendy's and Dave and Wendy, his daughter, just talking about that and finding that story again. And that's really important because otherwise we're just merely talking about abstract legal entities. So that's what's happening there. And I guess in the last 20 or 30 years, the word brand has become much more important and much more prevalent in pop culture. So that now people are thinking, wow, we're seeing the big examples from Nike, Apple, Microsoft. We need to do what they're doing. But this is the classic mistake of design and business and marketing, is to do what they're doing, but you've not been through what they've done. This is the trap. So I don't know if they're intentionally trying to sound bigger or badder. They just don't have a lot of great examples. So they look at how the corporations talk. Now, we have to realize something. When a message is put out by Apple or Sony or anybody else, it's run through a whole team of people, art directors, designers, writers, ACDs, and accounting and account services, account management, and legal. So by the time it gets out, it's like the safest version of saying something without alienating people. And we feel that. Now, the brands who are really like visionary led by a CEO, there's less and less filters. The CEO says, I want to say this. This is what we're about. And Patagonia is one of them. They said that Mother Earth is our client, and we're in business to save our home planet. It's very clear what they're saying. They're putting a flag in the ground saying, we stand for this. We stand for against everything else. You're with us or you're against us. That's totally cool, but we know where we stand. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm probably going to get some hate for this. Patagonia is a successful company, despite their products not being great, in my opinion. Their designs are terrible. Their color palettes are terrible, but I still buy it. They're great in terms of like how they're built and how they think about life and death in terms of their product cycle, but it's not a great design. But we will buy more into something when we believe in what they believe in, because we're buying into the story and their ideas, because we want that company to succeed. So we'll give them our money. So when it comes to like people, we're all spun around here. And there's a great article about this in, I think, the May, June issue of Harvard Business Review from last year, talking about performance marketing or direct marketing and brand building. They live on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So the more we do performance marketing, it comes at the great cost of brand building. And I'll give you the classic example. So if you're really in direct sales and you're selling all the time, you'll make your numbers, you'll make profit. But what you're not doing is you're not building a relationship with a customer. On the flip side, and this is an extreme case, there are people who've been working on, say, content, and they have nothing to sell. And they've been working on this for days, months, and years. And eventually, at some point, they launch a beverage because people are like, what kind of drink are you drinking? How do you stay so healthy? Or what do you do for your skin? They're like, oh, I really endorse this product. And then they catapult into multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar status. So it's two different games. I'm not telling you one is better, but you have to decide what camp you're going to be in. Where it gets really messy is people are confused and they go in the middle. And that's what we were talking about in one of our calls, where you think you're creating content and building relationships, but really it's a very thin mask of just performance marketing. So my way around this is, when you want to give value, give value. When you want to sell like hell. Don't worry about that. Just don't mix the two waters, because it's very confusing for people and they can see right through it.
Right. It's kind of like, hey, I'm going to make 10 posts that are purely just me in my relationship with my audience, not a single whiff of commercial intent. And then that 16th post might be like, I'm doing a workshop, you should come.
You should come. Here's the price. I've done all the value up front. You know me, you trust me, or you don't know me, you don't trust me, and that's fine, but I've done that work. The ratio I give to people, and it's just a rule of thumb, is 9 pieces of value, one piece that you sell. And then the missing component, because it's 911, is 1 piece where you just talk about you. I'm not asking you to buy anything. I'm not creating value, but I need you to know the person behind all of this. Some people have gotten really good at teaching people, and they don't see the person in it. They don't see the personality. They don't see their voice. And so it's great for giving value, but then there's still no brand affinity. And I've made this mistake myself. I'm an educator. I see myself as one. I give tons of value. And then a couple of years ago, somebody's like, yeah, I like his content, but I have no idea who this guy is. He never appears in any of his things. And I thought falsely, you don't want to see me. You just want me to teach you. And then as soon as I start putting myself in the content, in the post, then I could see the engagement go up. It's like, oh, you're a real person. You have a family. Oh, you're raising 2 boys, and you live here. This is what your life kind of looks like. Good and bad, it's there. And I think that's what we need. So there's the intentionality of creating value in the spirit of generosity with no expectations attached to it. There's the full-throated, unabashed, I'm going to sell you something because I think it's to your benefit to buy this thing. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about me from time to time. And that's the ratio I go with.
So in the world of AI, we now have AI avatars, not just voice, but video as well. What does a person who's a real living human being, flesh and blood, who wants a personal brand, how do we compete with the inevitable video AI avatar that is scripted by ChatGPT to say clever things, to supposedly follow maybe even the 911 formula?
Yeah. I think the artificial large language models have done a really good job of understanding rules. So when you're trying to write an essay, you want to submit a report, if you want to create a legal document, it's very good at doing that because there are very well established rules. And it does it to a fault because human beings don't write or speak like that. And I've done tests quietly out there between, here's a post I wrote, here's a post I wrote with some AI editing, and here's an AI edited or created thing based on things I've said. So those are not my words or sentence structure. And I'm not sure everybody can see it, but I think they feel it. So there's like weird non sequiturs or improper grammar or structuring, but it's conversational. Quentin Tarantino, somebody I really respect, he's credited as this great filmmaker who's super consistent because he has an ear for dialogue. He writes the way that people speak. And when you understand his craft and you look at other writers, it's a world apart. And for me right now, I can see that distance, and perhaps in the coming months and years, I'll be wrong about this, but it's still based on creative formulas and rules. So when I write a post that's from my heart, it's going to sound a lot different than me using a large language model to write for me. So I'm not so concerned about that yet. In terms of the world of avatars and digital doppelgangers of us, what I think is, Tim, you should create content from your voice, from your mind, from your heart, about things that you really care about. And then if you want to expand into Mandarin, Japanese, or Korean, use a digital version of yourself that can then use your ideas, but translated at scale. I love that idea. And it's not perfect today, but it's getting better every single day so you can reach a broader market. So the idea is if you have something good to say, more people need to hear it and more people need to watch it. And we can use digital avatars. And people are not going to say, well, Tim's trying to pull a fast one because, oh, I didn't know he didn't know how to speak Japanese. And when did you have time to learn that? We accept that that's okay. Or if you're speaking Portuguese or whatever other language you may or may not know. I think that's a really good use for it. Where I think there's real value in using AI assisted content creation is if you're a thought leader and you create lots of things, you write a book, you do hour-long presentations and talks and workshops, is the question is always, what do I do with all of that? Well, for sure, cut up some of that content, but this is where AI is very helpful to somebody like me. We have friends who are very good at writing prompts. We'll scrape 4, 6, 7 hours of content and pull out key ideas. And then based on those key ideas, we can highlight the ones we want to talk about. And then say, based on what was said, build a great carousel that supports that key idea. That's a standalone piece of content that's designed to mimic my voice, my tone, my style of speaking. And then it'll kick out something. And that first draft is where most people will stop. And I say, don't stop there. Critique it, give it feedback, tell it why it's not in your voice or what is off. And they say, run it again. And if you do that enough times, what you would write and what the machine writes gets to be pretty blurry in terms of who authored what. And you should also tell it instructions about don't provide examples or story points that aren't mentioned directly in the original workshop because those are not my ideas. I don't necessarily support that. But if you hear an idea that wasn't clear, please find inspirational quotes, find data points, expand on those things. And I think we're getting close to like where it knows to do that already. I think that's really exciting because now I can take a 7-hour piece of content that doesn't live anywhere to create carousels, to create LinkedIn posts, to create scripts for 30-second shorts or 1-minute shorts. And then I think that's a great use of the tool. But it's a tool. It's not meant to replace me.
I'm wondering if you could speak to that broader lens of what a personal brand is far beyond what I just post on the internet.
Okay. Marketing talks about what you do. Branding is who you are. And we need to get that clear. And so a lot of people are using branding to go and sell more widgets. And they come to me all the time. It's like, I work on my personal brand. If it's good for my business, then I say, good on you. I think you need to focus on marketing. That's what moves the needle for business in the short term. And I'm not really the right person to talk to for that because I'm the anti version of that. So for full disclosure to everybody, I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 53 years old. I've built my business. I've been prudent with how I've saved my money, and I'm not in the place of trying to make more money right now. So I think people go through at least 2 phases in their life. Phase 1 is how do I make money? Phase 2 is how do I make a difference? I'm in the how I make a difference part of my life. And I'm not here to judge anybody. It's not really about age it's just everybody's going to come to their own conclusion. I just got back from like this large mastermind, very successful people. I'm probably the poorest person there, really. But what I thought was really interesting was the gentleman who had made the most money in that room, as far as I could tell, his company from 0 to 8 years was doing like $400 million a year. And you know what he said? He goes, the last couple of years I did not enjoy work. I was burnt out. And if you want what I got, you will be where I was. He goes, I'm not sure. And he had a really funny line. He goes, I'm too young not to do nothing, but I'm too old to go back into that grind again. So he's kind of in a weird place. He goes, I think I'll do another business, but I think if I'm going to do something, I'm much happier when it was a $50 million company. And he shared the story, and he says, when I made $100 million, the first thing I thought, when I saw $100 million in the bank cleared net, his first thought was not, this is awesome. How do I make that $200 million? So it's like the pursuit of more. And so I just asked this question to your audience, your community. After you bought all the watches, the cars, the homes, you've taken all the trips, at the end of your life, when you look back on it, what are you going to want more of? Probably more quality time doing the things that give you most joy. And that's kind of how we think of it, right? Like when I've made enough money, what I'll do is I'll retire. And what is retirement? I'll just do the things that give me joy, filled with passion and purpose, and that's what I'll do. The question is, why do we wait until we're too old and able-bodied to do something about it? So I'd like to encourage the conversation. So it's like, it doesn't have to be at the end of your life. It could be your life. Because if the end is what's important, why don't we just close the gap and say at 40, at 30, or at 55, however old you are, why can't that be your life today? Because at the end, no matter what happens when they're going to bury your body, all the watches, the cars, the homes, the clothes, the jewelry, you can't take it with you.
In ancient Sanskrit, in the Bhagavad Gita, they split up the world into that which will be crushed by time versus that which will not be crushed by time. Our body, our business, our bank accounts, to your point, the watches, all that will be crushed by time. In fact, this country, maybe even this planet, given enough millennia, will be crushed by time. And so the extent to which we are attached to that which will be crushed by time is likely the degree to which we're going to have suffering. Whereas the degree to which we're attached to that which will not be crushed by time is likely the degree to which we have fulfillment and satisfaction, and not at the pearly gates, but even today. So I think to bring this back to the idea of AI, one of my thoughts, and I'd love your feedback, is I think I've widened my view on personal branding to include what do I do in my real life? And to me, that's in a sense almost like the ultimate defense against AI, because AI can't shake someone's hand and look them in the eye and say, I love you, or thank you, or thanks for coming to Austin. And, I think supply and demand is a real thing. And so if we have 100 million perfect AI thought leaders that are they don't actually exist, they're avatars of different people putting out perfect content, then what makes us different such that it's a unique experience? Humans crave exclusivity and different, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how do you think about that in almost kind of like that relationship between your online personal brand versus kind of like how IRL life really happens?
We talked about this at that mastermind retreat on Friday. And I was just very fortunate because there was a woman, her name is Molly, and Molly's like, I met Chris 2 years ago, and he's just as cool in real life as he is online. He's the same person. And everybody's like, oh. And I said, thank you, but I find that that's a strange thing to have to point out. So what is that saying? That there's that expression, be careful of meeting your heroes because they'll disappoint you, because people are not who they pretend to be. And it's a really sad thing. And I have this theory, if you pretend long enough to be something, I think you forget who the real you is. And it's really hard to find your way home. And so we create a persona to be accepted, to be loved, to be liked, but that's not even us. So we feel trapped by this identity we've created so that we can no longer be our true selves, because we fear, well, they fell in love with this person. If I just show them how deprived or crazy I am, I have an addiction with this or that, then no one will like me. And so we keep living in this shell of who we are. And I don't know if we ever get to that point when we can break free. It's a dangerous game to pursue. So my philosophy on this, and it's not a radical idea, it's like, I would rather be hated for who I am than to be loved for somebody I'm not. And I really believe that in my heart. And so when people are like, Chris, you're being too much, you're polarizing, I'm like, okay, so I'm not for you, friend. That's okay. And that's the beauty of this world. It's like there are 8 billion people. I don't have to be for all 8 billion. I could just be for 4. And if I speak your love language, if I communicate in the style that you like, if you like that kind of direct, kind of acerbic tone that I have, I'm your guy. And when I'm no longer that guy, you've graduated. Move on to the next person. I'm good with that. So it is kind of a shame that we live in a time where that's the anomaly, that people are actually who they pretend to be on camera. And that, sadly, to kind of validate it, is actually when I do meet those people, I'm like, oh my God, you're nothing like who you pretend to be. And it's just causing a massive amount of cognitive dissonance in my mind. I was like, why would you do that? And you know eventually you're going to go out. So you know what they do? They just don't go out. They just stay in their closet, metaphorically speaking.
I've been really lucky to hang with some kind of like titans, you know, such as yourself and Perry Marshall and Gary Vaynerchuk, like hang out for hours on end, you know. And it's interesting you say that, because Perry's the exact same guy when we're just texting or talking or, you know, waiting to go on stage together. You've been the exact same guy, whether it was our first ever call, when you're teaching from the front of the room, when we were sitting around dinner in Vancouver, or we're here in Austin chatting. Gary, we're in the back of the SUV rolling around Austin, and my dear, dear friend Tan asked Gary, what do you think is one of the main reasons why you've had such staying power, going all the way back to Wine Library TV forward? And we're talking like 20 years at this point. How many people have come and gone since then, right? And if I remember correctly, Gary said, well, I think there's two things. Number one, I always act as if there's basically like cameras rolling, not in the performative sense, but in the sense that even like his performer life on stage is the same as his private life. And this, he said, the second thing is I only talk about things I know. I don't try and overreach and try to be a thought leader on topics that I haven't done, or I don't really have something particularly unique or well-informed to say. And it's like kind of remarkable that it's just kind of that simple, that kind of 1-2 punch. Yeah. One of the first times you and I ever had contact, I DM'd you on Instagram. First message I ever sent you was actually, I would like to send you $10,000. Where do I send it? You remember that?
I remember it, of course. You don't get those messages that often, so it's kind of like, I would remember that one. Yeah.
There are dozens, if not hundreds of people that I could go learn personal branding from on planet Earth. And a lot of them are like, oh, pick 5 categories to talk about. And it's that kind of very commercial intenty, like it has some stripe of be yourself, but it doesn't have that full blast. Like, my heart is open, take me as I am. I'm not here to, you know, shove anything in anyone's face. Like, I'm not here waving the freedom of speech flag and you're going to have to suck it, whatever comes out of my mouth. Like, no. There's just such a calm kind of like, I'm very comfortable in my skin. And it came through in all of your videos. And I didn't need to read a sales letter. I didn't need a sales call. All I needed was to experience you. And I sent you $10,000.
Yes, you did.
So thank you so much for being a voice for truth and just kind of, and I think underneath that, Chris, is like the unbelievably hard work that is the inner game of healing and coming to terms with ourselves and all the wonderful parts and all of the flaws. That's way harder than coming up with a cool ChatGPT prompt to say, how should I, based on what you know about me, how should I react to the latest accounting scandal or something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think it's harder on the surface, but the easiest thing in life is to be yourself. I'd love to just end it on a kind of a slightly woo idea, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just kind of timing and coincidence, a gentleman that I know, his name is Dr. Vu, was standing behind me as I was getting on the airplane. And he goes, Chris, hey, how's it going? So we wind up having this beautiful conversation from Burbank to Austin. And I was telling him about something, and I don't consider myself a deeply spiritual person. I don't practice any form of traditional meditation or chanting. I don't do any of that stuff. But sometimes when I speak, this happens. And a woman came up to me kind of at the after party. She goes, Chris, I just want to give you a hug. You're such a spiritual healer. I'm like, well, if you say so. And I told Dr. Vu this. He goes, I can see that. I'm like, well, what are you seeing, bro? What are you seeing that I don't see in myself? He goes, well, it depends on your definition of spirituality. He goes, to me, and he's very much about mind healing body kind of thing and longevity. He said, and he said something beautiful. I hope I'm saying it right. He said, Spirituality is the ability to recognize, accept, express your truest self. And I was like, shoot, maybe I'm a spiritual person, because in the personal branding philosophy of mine, that's all I want for people. Who are you? Love yourself, like all parts of you. The ugly parts, that's the hardest part to love, and the beautiful parts, which everybody loves. And then learn how to express yourself. And that's what I try to give people permission to do and tools to do that. And when we can do that as a city, as a state, as a country, as a society, in the world, I think it's a better place.
Amen, my friend. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure.